Buenas tardes, bienvenidos a este encuentro con Murray y Lerner. La verdad es que es una gozada, ¿sabéis? Bueno, a lo largo de estos últimos años hemos tenido masterclass con casi todos los realizadores homenajeados en las últimas ediciones del festival. Como sabéis, este año el homenajeado es Murray y Lerner. La verdad es que es una maravilla tenerlo aquí, entre otras cosas, porque sus documentales son maravillosos y por regla general pasan incluso los límites o las llamémoslas convenciones del propio documental musical. Todavía a lo largo de, bueno, durante este fin de semana todavía se podrán ver 3 de sus títulos, uno de, bueno, From Mouth to Mozart, Festival y Message to Love. Él hará presentaciones de cada uno de los 3 documentales, pero bueno, en cualquier caso, hoy tenemos el placer o el privilegio, como queráis llamarlo, de contar con él con esta masterclass en la que nos hablará de su trabajo y a partir de cierto momento podéis preguntarle las cosas que queráis alrededor de lo que haya dicho o de los docus, en el caso de que ya los habéis visto, y en definitiva de entablar una conversación con él, que es de lo que se tratan este tipo de encuentros. Muchas gracias por estar aquí a pesar de este día lluvioso. Desde luego, muchas gracias a Murray y empezamos cuando quieras.
I talk into this? Do I have to move it to me? Is this okay? Okay. Okay, well, what I've done is prepare a reel of clips, that is, excerpts from some of the major films in my career, starting at the beginning and discussing how I developed my ideas about film. I think you have to move it closer to me. Yeah. Is this better? Yes. All right, just to begin again, as I say, I have a series of clips of films going way back to the beginning of my career and discussing how I developed my ideas about that film and also how it developed my general ideas about filmmaking as I went along. Although I do films in what might be called cinema verite, I'm very different from other people in that field. I have concepts in advance of what I want to do, and I try to have my films be in focus, the correct exposure, and that you can hear it, which is often not the case in a lot of documentaries, so-called cinema verite. Let me begin with the first major film I did was a very big nature project. I worked for about 2 years on it, and it was an underwater film, and we developed a lot of concepts about photography in making, you might not think so, an underwater film, because a lot of the film was not underwater, it was in tanks that looked like it was underwater. And we learned you had to be very precise about the exposure, for instance. So we had a special exposure meter, which very fine, which we took readings on and developed a precision in doing exposure, for instance, and focus, because everything was moving around, you see. And then, of course, we learned to research. We did a lot of our own research in those days. Very few people knew anything about underwater nature. And we, instead of just showing different scenes, though I'll show you an exciting scene now, we developed an idea which permeated or ran through our films, namely the relationship of animals to their environment and the environment to the world. And in other words, our film was based on the ecology of the sea. If I'm talking in words that it's hard to translate, please let me know. And here's a very exciting scene from, I consider exciting, from the film, which took about 3 days of waiting without sleep to capture. So that seahorse is about 6 inches high, and the little baby is about less than an inch. And that's actually the male seahorse. The female puts the eggs in his pouch, and the birth is from his pouch. So it's a scene which is amazing, but also amazing because of the number of seahorses that are born, of course. Only one will probably survive. So that's one of the themes in the film, of the number of births that are needed to perpetuate the species. Anyway, that was a very exciting project and a very disciplined one. As I say, it took a number of years to do and was very well received when it came out. Played in theaters for a while. Then I went on to do documentaries, and we'll jump some years to, I did a film about education at Yale University. Let me see if I can move how I get to the next thing on this reel. Hold on. How do I do that? How do I get to it each time? No, never mind. Okay.
It's hard enough to it's hard enough to keep yourself intact psychologically as it is, even in the 20th century. Imagine how it was back there. When everything around you was.
I'm sorry, we gotta figure something out, which is how I control this. That's it. How do I do that? Let him come back here. Show me how to do that. How do I get to that menu? Please come back here and show me how I do this.
Like this.
No. Show me how I get to what you did. How do I get to that?
Do you remember?
Huh? Okay. By going down?
Going down on title.
And
Title.
Stop.
Stop here.
This is fast forward.
Exactly.
Okay. We'll get to. I learned through this film, I developed an interview technique which was to capture people in the middle of action instead of just, which I also talk to people, but this kind of thing which it's very funny, but I don't know if you're not an English speaker whether it will be, but this is a young freshman who just moved into Yale. Many things I developed in this film. One is I was not happy, as I said, with the ordinary cinema verite, which shots are not in focus or out of, you know, or not exposed properly. So I taught myself to hand hold on my shoulders or on a brace to focus, to expose, and to zoom properly and keeping the exposure right, and the sound, making sure the sound was good. And you can see that things are... now, every shot in that film was handheld, I mean, so... And it was really interesting to deal... I mean, my concept in this film was to show that how education can be therapeutic. These kids have never been to school before. That was a new concept at that time. They were kept in institutions, and a number of parents got together and made a school, and I felt that showed that education can be therapeutic. Sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. Some of these kids never got better and some did get better. So, and getting better meant going to public school. And it was very moving, I must say. Now, the big project that I did, which you've seen here, was the Newport film. And how did I get to the Newport film was that I was a big folk music fanatic and tried to get money for films on folk music, and no one was interested. And then when I went to Newport, I was invited to help them perfect an archive of their performers. I felt what was happening was much broader than just performance. It was youth expressing itself about the meaning of life and their attempts to have a better life through music. And I thought that's what I decided to make a film about. So my film at Newport is about that topic, and I use performance to express that topic. And the way I approach a film is I usually have a concept in advance, not just out of thin air, but out of research and thinking, and then I try to find iconic illustrations of that concept, if that means anything to you, but things that symbolize that concept and not just random shots of everyone or everything. And that's what I tried to do in that film, and I think that's what the public responded to and why it's still considered a film. You know, people still watch it, but I think it's timeless because it's about a timeless concept. And one, unfortunately, that an idea we still need in America, certainly, and probably in the rest of the world, because while it had some effect, it still hasn't, you know, it's still weak in a way, unfortunately, politically. But here's another concept I had was about my participation in the film. And that came through in Festival very strongly, where I'm not a fly on the wall, but a participant observer. And that's why I began the film with, let's see, hold on. Oh, with this, wait.
Okay, six please. Let me in, please.
Anyway, I opened the film that way. And it's to show a certain idea about my involvement, or someone's involvement in the making of the film, that there's a person making this film, and not just a fly on the wall, so to speak. So you know, sometimes people are puzzled by that, but usually people like that. And as I say, the whole film opens that way. And then we go to this famous scene of the crowd rushing, but I think actually this scene has been a little cut, but the other thing about this film that is interesting is that one of the people I was working with had been reading a book of someone named Marshall McLuhan, who was very famous for coming up with the idea that the media is the message, that the form of something is equally as important as the content in communicating ideas and feelings. And we apply it. It struck us immediately that we should try to make this film move like a piece of music. And we think it does. And when we edited this film, every time we added a scene, we went back to the beginning and ran it to see how it seemed to feel musically. And in those days, that was a big effort because it wasn't electronic, it was film, and the machines that you ran film on the film kept breaking all the time. So, and we had 3 pieces, 3 pictures and 2 tracks, and when every time we ran the film, it broke, and we had to keep repairing it. So it was a big effort to do this. But I worked with this great editor who's dead now, unfortunately, Howard Alk. You may know his work because he helped do Don't Look Back and was very close to Dylan. So, but he was a great, brilliant man, and his editing was really extraordinary in terms of music. Well, let me run this crowd scene because it's so dramatic. I don't know if you catch, the end is funny because he misspells the word blues. But I was doing the photography of most of my interviews at the beginning of my career, like here I was. And that's one scene where I'm very proud of having disciplined myself to focus and expose and all of that, because you have a black hand on a white shirt, and you're going from a black face down to that, and you have to change your exposure to make it right. And so I taught myself that to do on the spot. And the way I did that was every day when I photographed music, I would practice for an hour with an assistant, turning the lens and asking how far was I right on the footage that I was guessing at. So I really was like a dancer who taught himself how to handle a camera. And I feel that that's a very exciting way of doing things if you have the discipline to do it, which I haven't seen too much of. So therefore, I'm pointing out several things in this film. The musical quality of the film itself, the fact that I was participating in it openly, and the fact that I was trying hard to have a disciplined use of the image, which is, as I say, in focus, expose well, and being able to zoom without losing focus and without losing exposure. It seemed to work, and I thought it was very exciting to work that way. As I went on, I really kept developing the idea that with those tools, I would develop a concept for a subject that excited me and make a structure out of that concept. I was never chronological and never what should I say? I never believed in just recording something. I always brought to it my feeling that I was making a film and not an event. So that, like in my Isle of Wight film, it wasn't at all chronological. It was a set of themes that I think characterized the festival and gave you an insight into the truth of what was happening. So I would juggle, I would put people who were last, first, and so forth. And same thing in this film, but more so in the Isle of Wight. Let's see. Yeah, all of this was hand, I had to focus right on the fingers at that time, yeah. And this was Butterfield, okay. This was the Isle of Wight. I should say that my theme in the Isle of Wight was developed out of what I saw happening to the movement started at Newport, that I thought it was being corrupted, and partly corrupted, mainly corrupted by the music business. That what was happening was that there was a clash between the idealism of the music and the commercialism of the music business. And I was especially, I felt vindicated in that idea when I saw Woodstock, which I did not like. Because of that, I thought it was too glib, too surface. I wouldn't use the word phony, but I think it was. And I didn't like it. I'm sure most of you did like it. And that led me to making my Isle of Wight film as a reaction to show that there was more to these festivals than you saw at Woodstock, or more, that in the 4 or 5 years since Newport, the thing had been changed, and that, among other things, money was a powerful force in it, and I show money. I decided to show money finally, and why did I call the film Message to Love, which is the title of a song by Jimi Hendrix? Partly because I was trying to do a play on the concept of love, of different uses of the word love that occurs throughout the film, actually. Like he says, we put on this festival with a lot of love. I don't know if many people catch that, but that was my idea of, and throughout the film there's a lot of uses of the word love, a lot of them ironic, a lot of them the opposite of what Hendrix is talking about, and more like what he's talking about. As the manager, there's a person who is the manager type, and he says, well, I guess, I ask him about love, he says, well, I don't know, because they love money, he said. That's what they really love. So I tried to do that throughout the film. I don't know how many people catch that, but that was my idea, number one. Secondly, I picked a very few number of people who were like iconic representations of ideas and types, like the woman with the big breast, she was a baroness on the island. And then there was a commander who had the pipe in his mouth, if you saw the film. He represented the conservative element. So there were a number of, and then there was a hippie carpenter who worked for them. So I decided to limit the number of people that I would use as representing my story or telling my story. And also, there's nothing chronological in this film. This outburst happens much later in reality. And I may be wrong, but I don't think it matters. And you be the judge of that. I think the themes are more important because, as I say, I'm not recording an event, I'm making a film which expresses my feelings and I hope is echoed in the feelings of the audience. So I'm trying to develop a rapport with an audience to join me in my feelings when I make a film. The extreme example of that is, and that's the thing I would like to convince you of, is when you photograph a concert, I don't do that chronologically either. I'm not photographing a concert, I'm making a film which uses the photography of the concert. If you've seen my The Who at the Isle of Wight, or will see it, and I don't know if it's playing again, in the middle, at that time, The Who did Tommy in the middle of their concert. I didn't think it belonged there. I put it at the end because it was much more powerful. The end of Tommy is so powerful that I didn't think anything could really follow that. And I feel I was right in my film. And actually, they started to put Tommy at the end of their concert. But, I had fans complaining about it. Some complained to Pete Townsend. He said, well, that's what the director wanted, so it's okay with me, which was nice of him. And so I've met this criticism quite often, including people who lived on the Isle of Wight who saw my film and they said, well, this isn't the right order of things. But I don't care. And so therefore, is the role of a documentary to be a newsreel or to express something that the maker of the documentary feels? You have to judge that. I feel the latter, and have worked most of my career in that vein. Have I presented material falsely? I don't think so. I think it's more of the truth. I think that really is cinema verite, not the opposite. I think the fly on the wall doesn't reveal the truth at all. Because first of all, the person who's being watched by a fly on the wall is always wondering who's watching him and what's happening. Whereas by my being open and talking to people during my making of a film, I think it reveals more of the truth. And it's like in modern physics, you can't see the truth about a particle. You can only see the interaction of particles. I don't know if that means anything, but that seems to be the case in quantum physics, but to be a little, overblown. But so my career has been that way. And often I've gotten myself in trouble when I talk to the person, but not too often.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Those two scenes symbolize, like hippie culture, I guess, at the time. He was actually giving that little kid acid. And I think I put the song next as a commentary on that scene. Naked Eye, if you know the song, he said, it doesn't really happen that way at all. Now, they didn't sing the song at that time at all. It was part of their act earlier. So I was just using it for me to make my comment on the scene. I don't know, I'll ask questions about that. And you may be critical of that and not, maybe I should open up the floor for questions now and then go on to show you some of my works in progress now. Let's have some questions. If there are any.
Hi, good evening, Maury. I'm going to do a question in Spanish, okay, for the rest. I was wondering if... me preguntaba si ha tenido alguna vez la tentación de hacer una filmación o un documental sobre la gente que ha conocido a lo largo del tiempo y cuya ideología puede haber cambiado. Por ejemplo, esta gente que hemos visto en las entrevistas, a lo mejor a día de hoy tienen una ideología radicalmente opuesta, incluso gustos musicales diferentes. Entonces me gustaría saber si ha pensado o ya ha hecho este pensamiento alguna vez y qué opina de que...
Definitely, yeah. Good. I mean, definitely, I do. Yeah, I have thought about it. I think it would be a great idea to show that if I could, get the funding for it. It's a good idea, yeah. Excellent idea. And there have been so many people in my films that I keep thinking I see them all over the streets and the elevators and everything. So, yeah, I could find them, I'm sure. I meet a lot of people who have been at the Isle of Wight, for instance. So, yeah, it's a good idea. I think most people have changed.
I don't know if you can hear me. I was wondering if you think that nowadays it's still possible to do a documentary like the ones that you've done before, because it seems that bands nowadays have everything under control and there's so much security and everything is like they want to control what they're on their TV and everything, so it seems like there's no room at all for spontaneous movies or really, truly documentaries. So I was wondering if we always look at the big documentaries like the ones that we or you guys made on the past, but it seems that today everything's kind of fake, and I was wondering if this is like that or not. Sorry.
I think you're right to some extent, but I think there's a way of breaking through that by making people trust you and then surprising them with your questions and attitudes. It takes a lot of work. I'm trying to do that myself, but people are suspicious now of anything that they think is not prearranged, especially in the media. And I'd like to do some films about the media today, like on an anchor person, on TV. And it's difficult, but I think it's possible. It's possible. There's no question that people are more ideologically afraid to come out of their shell, I would say, to put it in one way. But I think it's possible. I think it's possible. I'll see. Yes.
Watching your movies, I've seen the Isaac Stern movie as well, and I kind of had a sensation that in your work, your characters are always dealing with some kind of uncomfortableness or kind of a tension within or a situation or an ideology, or it's just an idea. I really wanted to know if it is on purpose that you work with a tension in your documentary from your characters, and if it is like that, why?
I couldn't understand her. It was too echoey for me to hear it. Did you understand the question, Johannes? I couldn't understand your question.
Okay.
Maybe someone should sit
Like,
up here and help me with that.
Do you listen?
I can't.
Vale, aquí lo pregunto en castellano.
What? Okay.
Viendo su trabajo y también el documental sobre Isaac Stern, me da la impresión, y no sé si es a propósito o no, que existe una tensión en la manera que usted documenta, una tensión entre los personajes con alguna determinada situación política o social. Quisiera saber si eso es a propósito, esa tensión, o no, y si es que es a propósito, si es que cómo lo utiliza dentro del relato.
It's an excellent question, and of course I do create the tension without realizing it quite often, and I'm using as I say, the interplay between myself and the person as part of the story, and often, it's like Stern. If I caught him in the middle of action and asked him a question, he didn't like it, and that led to a certain amount of tension, but it produced some interesting results because he had to think about it, and I don't have a specific way of doing it in my story, but I do what you're saying in a way. What is tension? I think there's I try to get people to open up and examine themselves in a way and their feelings, if you call that tension. Even Sunhouse in Festival did that to a very high degree, or Butterfield. So it's an interesting question, but I think I do that, yes. And yes, very much so.
Permítame una pregunta no tan interesante, mucho más técnica. Pero yo me pregunto, por ejemplo, ¿cuántas cámaras utiliza para hacer festival? ¿Cuántas para From Mao to Mozart? ¿Y cuántas, por ejemplo, en la Isla de Wight?
I used 4 cameras in Festival. I used 9 cameras in the Isle of Wight. I used 3 cameras in Mao to Mozart. It varies with the funding and the possibility of, what's offered to me. And finding the right people. And generally I like less cameras, but at the Isle of Wight there was such a big crowd that I thought I would need it to go out into the crowd while we were filming the artist.
Hola, mi pregunta será en español.
Good.
A mí también me gusta. Más. Como ha dicho usted que haciendo festival no quería hacer un reportaje sobre el festival, sino usar el escenario del festival para crear su película que trata de sus ideas. Relacionado con esto, tengo una pregunta. Si usted escribió un guión antes de rodar la película, o lo hizo después ya en la postproducción. ¿Cómo es al tema del guión para el documental así? Gracias.
I don't. I have a treatment sometimes which outlines the ideas, and then of course in the editing I create the film, but I don't have scripts as such in my filming. I have ideas, I have some figures that I say I'm going to follow, but that's about it. Like in the Isle of Wight, I thought I would follow I do a lot of thinking and research before I make a film, at least of that scope, not all my films. And then try to follow my ideas, but of course I'm open to surprises and new possibilities naturally as you see them, and so I'm not rigid about my working on a film, but you expressed well what I try to do, like about festival. That I was filming, I had ideas, I had people in mind, and then I made a film which expressed my ideas, and not a record of the event. Though in some ways it becomes I know it's arrogant to say that, but it becomes a truer record of the event in memory or in hindsight. I've had that experience with people than actually being there. And of course, let me go on about one other thing. It's interesting about the Isle of Wight, which was a huge event. On the 25th anniversary, which was when I got to make the film finally, a lot of British newspapers did interviews with people who had attended the Isle of Wight and asked for their memories. 90% of them were wrong. So it isn't necessarily that being someplace, as time goes on, your memories create new events, just as I do in film in a way. And I think it may be, and thinking it out now, maybe it's because you have your own idea and that idea changes your memory. So, anyway.
¿Cuál es el momento del nacimiento del documental?
Again?
¿Cuándo nace el documental? La data la fecha del nacimiento.
I thought it was in Russia, in real documentaries in Russia, with Giga Vertov, who did this film called Kino Pravda, I thought, which means cinema verite, in the 1930s, maybe. I don't know. I think other, just the early shots of railroad trains and all of that, which are like documentaries, aren't really. But I think the Russians started it, and of course Flaherty did some. It's interesting. Flaherty. You've all heard of Flaherty. If you really examine what he did, I don't know how truthful they were. For instance, he did something on the Aran Islands, Man of Aran, but it was definitely set up and manipulated and not at all truthful to the life of the Aran Islanders. And so I don't know, what truth is. It's an interesting question, and I think that, I can't remember, Murnau did a thing called Taboo, which I thought was much more truthful than Flaherty's Moana. I think he did a film about the South Seas called Moana. And I don't know if you've seen Taboo. It's really a great film. So I think, again, I look for the expression of an artist or an emotion to give truth to film rather than a passive record. Not that it's not dull to see, let's say you're photographing something in World War II. I mean, it's not exactly dull to see it, but it doesn't give you all, even there, you don't learn everything about it. You know, it's interesting what truth is. I know for some reason I heard a lecture which struck me very forcibly, and I'm not getting into the politics of Israel versus the Palestinians, but this anthropologist who examined films about Israel showed filming of a person behind barbed wire, and then she moved the camera over 10 feet, and the barbed wire ended. There was nothing stopping people from, and it was very vivid because someone chose the image behind the barbed wire to make a statement, but there was nothing, the barbed wire wasn't holding anybody anywhere, you know, so there is some of that in various filming. I think people do, I mean, you might call it, they lie in film also, you know. Anyway, I think Flaherty manipulated situations to make his point, and you know, it was probably a good film, but it wasn't truthful in a way. Not that it, well, it did matter in a way about Man of Aran. I was interested. I went to the Aran Islands, but anyway, maybe I'm going off on a tangent. Who else has a question?
Hello. You said before that you were observatory participatory on your research, and I wonder if you have any political ideas at the time, and if you were involved on what was going on politically, and if it have changed over the time.
Can you repeat that?
Me?
Repeat the question.
You said that your approach was being observatory participatory on the documentary filmmaking. And I wonder if you want to show your political point of view on that documentaries, and if it have changed over the years.
Well, of course, I don't know what you necessarily mean by a political point of view. When I made the Newport film, I was very much in favor of the ideas of the Newport Folk Festival and the excitement of young people expressing themselves through music and trying to change society. I was very much in favor of it. It comes through in the film, I believe. When I did the Isle of Wight, I felt that the movement had been somewhat corrupted by the music business and was not in favor of that. But I don't know if that's a political feeling or a social feeling. I think it's not political in the sense that we mean political, like a government or what. So I think, I don't know if that answers your question.
Sí, hola.
I'm not a member of the Tea Party. Though I like tea.
Sí, le quería hacer dos preguntas. Por un lado, me sorprendió la calidad del sonido directo. ¿Cómo consiguió durante el concierto? ¿Tenía pinchada alguna cámara en la mesa o lo consiguió posteriormente a través de una grabación del máster? ¿Cómo consiguió el sonido de los grupos que usó posteriormente en la película, en postproducción? Y por otro lado, antes comentó de un documental que grabó todo, o eso me pareció entender, con la cámara al hombro. ¿Ha usado alguna vez la Steadicam y considera que realmente es un progreso? Si la usó alguna vez, ¿qué resultados consiguió con ella?
Well, I think let me answer the end first. I think maybe I didn't say it right. I didn't get real good sound from the camera itself. I had it from a separate recorder. And the reason I had good sound was numerous. First of all, I had good trained sound men. I only used people who were really craftsmen in sound and knew what they were doing. And we often did what I did to choreograph my filming. I did that with sound people in terms of them holding the microphone and playing with it as people spoke as a practice. But so that when it came to speech, we worked very hard on good microphones, good sound men, and so forth. When it came to performance, I had the benefit of on the Newport, I had the benefit of a record company doing a recording and giving me a feed. Though often, sometimes we did our own, and it was just as good. And then at the Isle of Wight, it was more complex, and we had CBS, who recorded the entire concert, had 8-track machines, which at that time was the state of the art, and we got copies of that. There was a track made for me and a track made for them, and we also did a scratch track for editing on a Nagra. So yes, it was a master feed from a good recorder for the performances is what we mainly used. And yes, and of course, in post-production, there were lots of mistakes, and I had the benefit of very, very good mixers. I don't know if they use that word here, or mixers or dubbers, who re-recorded the concert and did great, amazing things with it. So you can do a lot now with improving sound in the final post-production. The only sound I did on cameras was interesting. I had one camera, which was like a newsreel camera, which you could do sound on film. And I used that to synchronize, to know where we're at and help synchronize the other cameras. So I wouldn't have to use what we call clapsticks. But it wasn't good quality.
Hola, yo tengo una pregunta. Ayer.
Maybe I should go on to the. What? Yeah. Yeah, I'll go on to new material after this question. Go on, please.
Pregunto yo. Hola. Ayer te escuché decir que nunca te involucrabas con las personas con las que trabajabas. Y me quedo dando vuelta. Que con las personas que trabajabas, cuando grababas a alguien, no te involucrabas con esas personas, que nunca te involucrabas a nivel personal.
Well, you're talking about performers on a stage, not people in a more casual environment. It isn't that I never got involved. It was difficult. I mean, I would like to. Actually, I don't know what I'd say to Dylan. You know, I don't think he'd be interested in talking to me. And he's a funny person. With Hendrix, I just didn't have the time. I'm sure he just left right after the concert, so there was no involvement because we were just filming him performing. I don't know if it makes any difference if I've had a beer with him before he performed or not. I don't think it does. I think when I'm filming a performer, I'm trying to express my feelings about his performance, not about my friendship with him. So that's all I meant. And same thing with Leonard Cohen. He wasn't interested in talking at that time, and he left right away. So some performers I did talk to, like the Who, and Melanie, if you heard of her, or Moody Blues, and So at Newport, I talked to a number of performers, but I was talking about filming performance, not other kinds of things. So maybe I misinterpreted, maybe I misspoke. Let me go on to some new material, other material. Well, I think I'll maybe skip Miles Davis, because what I did in Miles Davis was try to show the difficulty of him going electric, which I was conditioned by my experience with Dylan, how difficult it was for him, but it was much more difficult for Miles Davis. He was really reviled and, called a pimp and a whore and everything you can think of for trying to cater to white people. And this, of course, is this man here.
This is the Chicago. They get chance before they go on.
Mistake. Hold on.
How much is all this amount?
With music, you want to penetrate the listener, penetrate to the point where you reach what Miles Davis used to call spiritual orgasm.
That's bullshit. That's all part of just the Miles Davis myth. Miles Davis was trying to make some money. Miles Davis was so great. To see him grovel before these commercial arenas by the end of his life was really very difficult. So people had to say, oh, no, Miles didn't sell out. He's moving ahead.
So you see, this man really hated Miles' new work, and I loved it, and of course most people did eventually. This guy Stanley Crouch was a very negative force at that time. So that was the theme of that film. I had a theme, in other words, that I had this concert at the Isle of Wight. It wasn't long enough to fill a whole film. It was 38 minutes. And anyway, 38 minutes is a long time for one performance at a festival, because most songs are 3 minutes, 5 minutes. Even Tommy, was broken up in songs. 38 uninterrupted minutes is very long, and they're really great. Every time I watch it, like last night, the music is very powerful, I think, and really well thought out. So I chose the idea of the different obstacles he faced emotionally in going into electric music, and the people who work with him commenting on that. So that was my theme with him. And it's a powerful theme, because he was a great artist, I think, Miles Davis. And he wasn't afraid of anything, not afraid of anything. And people say he was, indifferent to other people. I don't think he was. I think he just had to harden himself to go on to do what he wanted to do. And a lot of people recognized him. I mean, he's worshipped by other jazz artists, a lot of them. Anyway, okay, so I'll go on to another film of mine.
But if you make this gesture and stop.
This is a great moment. Talk about the word masterclass. He was great at master classes. Isaac Stern. And this was one of the great moments in his master class in China.
You're going to hurt something. And you can't throw anything this way. To throw, you go all the way, yes? All the way? The same thing with the bow. All the way. It is a continuation, so follow through. Like in ping pong. Because nothing happens, you know, ball goes up there. Stop. Now come here and sing the beginning for me. Da da da. Just sing it. You sing it. Go ahead. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Beautiful. Now, why don't you play it this way? You know, did you hear what you did? You sang. But when you played it, you played... You see? One sings usually very naturally. You must always listen as if you were hearing something very beautiful. Then you must figure out how to do it here. So that when you go... Now start it once more and play it as if you were singing it. Think in here, sing in here, and play here. Ah, good girl, good girl, good girl, good girl. That's all right, you see.
I think it's a lesson, it's a beautiful piece of film, but it's also a lesson we can all learn about thinking about in here and expressing ourselves with a camera instead of a violin. I don't know if I'm making sense, but I think it's a great lesson to be learned from that piece of film. In China, I had the idea of showing and relating Chinese music to Western music. I mean, an obvious idea, but I felt more that we should see Chinese music and the beauty of Chinese music in addition to Western music, because, you know, when they invite someone over and he's a celebrity, they'll constantly flatter and flatter, and they'll deprecate their own music, which in this case, I kept them from doing for the filming, and it turned out to be very nice. And it brought out the spirit of China through the music, as well as the fact that Western music was coming to them for the first time. Now let me go on. This film really, by the way, we were amazed how well received this film was. It won an Oscar, but the point about it was that I'll tell a little story, because there's a series of theaters called Laemmle Theaters in Los Angeles, in California. At that time, the man who started Laemmle was still alive. He called me. He said, "We'd like to book your film for one day, one Sunday, but no advertising." I said, "I don't think so." Then he said, "My son just saw your film a week later, at the Academy said, we'd like to book it for 2 days, no advertising, 2 Sundays, not 2 days, 2 Sunday afternoon. P.S. They booked the film finally to run in their theater. It was the longest running film they ever had in their theater. It lasted 8 months. Who could have thought it? We wouldn't think it's that kind of a film. So you can't tell often about what will be received well.
Well, of course, the thing.
This may be more esoteric, but now these are films I'm developing. What interests me about people and artists is people who are new and take chances. You may gather that from my interest in Dylan and Miles Going Electric, and this is a composer who's 100, and he'll be 103 next month. He's still composing, and his whole life has been being an avant-garde composer and studying the avant-garde of the century. He got into music through listening to Stravinsky, The Rites of Spring. And this is a little illustration of how the avant-garde is rejected and then comes back to be accepted. When Stravinsky's Rites of Spring premiered, people threw eggs and things at the stage, and this is a little illustration of it.
It got me into being a composer was hearing in Carnegie.
Anyway, that's a recreation of the Paris premiere. And it's amazing because that's one of the greatest pieces of music in the 20th century. So that's how it was received at the beginning, and of course, his whole career has been, accepting, being interested in that kind of music that people have thought, was no good. And it took him 80 years for him to be accepted. So it interests me that I'm going to show the whole century of avant-garde music through his life. That's my approach. I'll go on to the next, because we're running out of time, the next.
Well, I've always thought that each of my pieces was a kind of...
That's an excerpt from, it's a chopped up excerpt of a film I'm developing on the guitar. That's from a Spanish poem, I guess you all realize, of Garcia Lorca. And the theme of the film is self-expression through the guitar, what it means to guitarists. And especially in jazz guitarists, that's the aim of their playing. So that's the theme of the film. But it's sort of chopped up what you just saw, but the guitarists are interesting guitarists, I think. And do I have time to show one more clip? What? Okay, somehow I skipped the Indian thing. And here's another film I'm trying to develop. Wait a minute. Here we are. This is a film in India that I'm trying to do about a group called Baul that expresses their... That's it. Everybody left? Any more questions? You see, this mad thing interests me because I'm interested in eccentric people who are... But I don't know if there's any more questions or it's too late. What time is it?
Yo solo quería preguntar si echabas de menos rodar en cine, básicamente, porque viendo las últimas películas que están hechas en vídeo, pues he pensado en si no rodas en vídeo, en cine, imagino por presupuesto y logística, y luego si es por eso, y si no, si lo echas de menos rodar en cine.
Absolutely, I do. I mean, I enjoy the immediacy of the video, but there's you know, a kind of skill in art and film which I miss, yes. But it is finance, yes. Film is very expensive, you know, and there are less and less places that develop it and print it.
Buenas tardes. En relación a la última parte de los documentales que hemos visto, parece ser que usted tiene un cierto interés más por el drama. Y aquí quisiera preguntarle si hay que mantener todavía una definición muy cerrada de lo que es un documental como exposición de imágenes desde el punto de vista del artista. Es decir, el punto dramático, ¿hay que buscarlo o se encuentra? Y después, ¿qué le parece la relación de la ficción con el documental? ¿Es partidario del docudrama, introducción de elementos de ficción en una pieza en sí misma? Gracias.
Well, the last part, I'm not so much in favor of docudrama because it's usually done very poorly, and it may be that there can be an artistic development which uses it properly, but I haven't seen it yet. It looks very sloppy and embarrassing, usually, I think. And you asked me what's the difference between fiction and non-fiction is, I don't know, very difficult to tell. I suppose if you have the right vehicle, fiction and non-fiction blend. But that's not docudrama. That's like, I can imagine a great, you know, well, for instance, Bicycle Thieves, the Sika film. Those were non-actors, but it was fiction, and somehow it felt great, you know, it felt real, whatever that means. But that was the borderline between documentary and fiction, and I think the Italian neorealists explored that quite strongly and very, very powerfully. So I don't know if you've seen those films. If you haven't, you should. Yes, yes. Bicycle Thief especially, or Thieves. Bicycle Thieves is the literal Italian, yeah. And Open City, of course.
¿Viste, bueno, no sé si has visto Don't Look Back de Penny Baker? ¿Qué le pareció el documental sobre Dylan? Don't Look Back.
I didn't hear that.
Don't Look Back from Penny Baker, Don Alan Penny Baker. Haven't you seen it?
Yes, somehow I have seen it.
Of course. Thanks.
It's bad. It's hard for me to comment on other people's work, so I can't hear you. What? Sí.
Quería preguntarles la obra de otros directores de documentales que le interesan a usted.
Well, I'm interested in several, but I'm interested in anything that's unusual. But I like Errol Morris, Fog of War, if you heard of that. Right now I can't think about too many, but I'll think of some and get back to you, as they say in the congressional hearings in America. There are some, but I tend to be insular about my own work, and I'm friends with all of these people, so I have a lot of feelings about things like Don't Look Back, but they're complicated. I know the people involved in it, I know how it happened, and it's a complicated series of events that I, in a way, was part of, or the fringes of it. And but I mean, Dylan is fabulous no matter how well, no matter what you do, so it's exciting from that point of view. I think Penny Baker has the opposite philosophy from me. Yeah, no question about it. And this editor, who became a very close friend of mine, had a very heavy influence on Don't Look Back and was with him and helped photograph it, Howard Alk. And his wife did the sound. So I was heavily involved with discussions of it with them. And I have a lot of complicated feelings about it.
Bueno, pues muchas gracias a Murray por este encuentro. Muchas gracias a vosotros por venir. Recordaros que todavía se pueden ver sus docus, para los que no hayáis visto algunos de los títulos, este fin de semana, entre ellos From Out to Mozart Festival o Message to Love. Gracias y un aplauso, ¿no?
Thank you.